So we're up to turn 14, November 21st, 1914. This is going to be a replay of the Entente's turns. I'm sorry, the turn is December 5th, 1914. Getting pretty close to the end of the year. We have 2 more turns left before we enter 1915. So here on the Belgian front, we're just kind of reshuffling units around, trying to get prepared in case the Germans decide to launch another attack. Same thing with France. That line's going to be pretty static going forward until we get some heavy artillery. British did have developed trench warfare level 1 this turn, which will help them up in the Belgian sector. French still haven't had any funds to develop trench warfare yet, but that'll change soon enough. Over on the Russian front, Brusilov's army is trying to break this last little flank on Przemysl. It's only guarded by a garrison at the moment, or detachment at the moment. So they do pretty good, but that's all the firepower they're able to bring bear. I'm having some supply problems in this area, which are slowing down my ability to move my troops forward. So here we're going to try and crack Krakow again. Really, my goal with the Russians right now is just to continue putting as much pressure as possible until hopefully so we can slow down the advance for the Germans. Oh, we got a nice little hit there. This is the Russian-Poland front. My main goal here is to try and keep these Germans from getting too well prepped, too dug in, because once they get their trenches up, I'll never get them out of there. But Krakow only barely survives. It's kind of interesting to watch the Russian situation. At first they start off as this giant bear, but they do kind of gradually start weakening. They have decent money, but not really enough to keep up with the huge cost of maintaining this big army. So the Serbs are going to start falling back now that they've seen that there's Germans showing up, basically trying to defend the Drina. I do take a chance to do one quick attack against an unprepared German corps. Montenegro front. Alright, so this is the Mid-Eastern front with the Ottomans. The British are going to try and make as much inroads as they can before the Ottomans can get their troops in place. Maybe we can possibly take Gaza. Love to take Jerusalem, but usually the Ottomans can get forces down to Jerusalem before we can reach it. If the Germans aren't doing too much on the Eastern Front, we may consider bringing more British forces in. That's all the action there was to report for this turn. See a few events show up here. Royal Navy defeated Von Spey at the Battle of the Falklands. I think that's just a little slight morale boost for the British. Ottoman morale drops pretty heavily due to the loss of Basra. You see down here it actually dropped about 10%. Get some new subunits. Real quickly before we end this AR, I just want to do a quick recap from the Central Powers standpoint of what happened in 1914. This is some very useful reports that show up in game. These give you a breakdown of what the current size of all the armies are. As you can see here, this large number, 63 units of land, is Russia. Germany has 54. Austria is at 26. The Ottomans are at 23. And the Western Front powers, UK and Great Britain, are at 16 and 17 respectively. As far as losses go, this is basically just a list of destroyed units. So you'll see that the British have lost 5. Most of those are Belgian units, which get counted in that total. The French only lost 2 corps throughout the whole assault on France. That was pretty good. Russia has only lost 6, 3 of which are corps. So that's not too bad for Russia. Germany's lost 4. Austria's lost 1. So Austria's done pretty well, apart from getting pushed back over and over. If we look at our graphs, so far convoys haven't really factored into the game much. We'll look at that again on the next seasonal update. You can see national morale graph. Germany fell pretty steadily and then jumped a little when the Ottomans joined. Austria has been on a pretty steady decline, had a slight increase when the Ottomans joined. This was the view I think is most useful. We can actually look at the production values and how much is being spent. So this green line is how much money is coming in. This red line is how many units worth of MPPs are being lost each turn. And then the blue is how quickly we're spending to recover. So as the British, you can see we're not actually taking losses that we can't recoup with our income. With the French, however, we are. There's a pretty huge increase right here. This is the number of lost units back in the very tail end of the invasion of France, which far exceeded what their income was. So France has to be a little careful with their MPP situation. That's meant to reflect their lower manpower than Germany. Russia, you can also see, took some pretty heavy losses here. This has been their big invasion, but after that, it stayed pretty close to being in line with the collected income. So, yeah, Russia's been playing this little balancing act of trying to keep their forces intact and still keep a drive going. Germany, taking pretty steady losses. However, their income's high enough that it usually is covering the gap. We definitely have had enough to invest in some technology as well. Austria has just been all over the place. You can see they've taken real heavy casualties every time the Russians have driven on them, and had a lot of trouble keeping up with the income covering the losses. Although it looks like it's starting to level out some, and the Ottomans just haven't been in it long enough to have much effect. So some useful graphs to see. This is what the Western Front looks like for the Germans. This will just basically be being dug in down on the southern end. So my plans at this point are to create a defensive line here to contain the Russians, a defensive line with some offensive operations here in East Prussia. I want to hopefully distract the Russians as much as I can, maybe drive on Kovno. Down on the Serbian front, we have a load of forces now, so it's probably going to take us a few turns to really get going, but before winter's over, I want to have all these forces driving straight down on Belgrade. If nothing else, at least take Belgrade, because that'll gradually help bring the Bulgarians in to the war. Now, the Austrian front is kind of a wreck here, but at least we've got good spots to defend, so we'll just be digging in with our trenches at this point. And then here's the Ottoman front. Basically, the Mid-Eastern front, we're going to just try and get as many troops down here to contain the British as we can. In the Caucasus, I'm not going to make the same mistake that Enver Pasha historically did. I'm just going to be building up a little defensive line through here on the Russian border. Make sure that my Gallipoli Peninsula here is well covered. Basically making sure all the important coastline points on the Ottoman Empire are covered and not exposed. And then hopefully we're going to have Bulgaria joining soon too. Maybe they can help drive into Serbia, wrap it up there, and then once we're done with that, we may have to kind of guard against Romania, which will start gradually moving towards the Entente after Bulgaria joins, and possibly even send some Bulgarian forces to help with the attack on Russia. But the Bulgarians will probably be more of a relief force for the Austrians here. The Austrians at some point need to get that Serb army over here to the Alps and try and help contain any advance that Italy might pull in. This is the Alp front. You can see it's mostly mountains, so it's pretty easy to contain the Italians. But the more we can keep along this main rail line, the better we'll do keeping the Italians from having many opportunities. So that's basically my general strategies at the moment. I'm purchasing a whole bunch of artillery as soon as I get my money in for the winter season. Artillery is going to be what makes the key difference on the Eastern Front in 1915. Well, speaking of which, I'm not going to be purchasing anything at the moment, but let's just kind of take a look at what we've got. For Germany, I've got some corps that were destroyed, these 4 with stars on them. I'm going to try and at least rebuild those over winter. I've also got 3 heavy artillery units, this number here, that I can still build. I'll definitely try and rebuild those. And I probably will go ahead and try and get this railgun as well. In conjunction with what I've already got in production, I've got a railgun coming online in January. That's January 16th. I've got 2 heavy artillery already in place for March. If I can get the other 3 coming in on May or June, we'll be in real good shape. That's probably all I'm going to really work. I might build another HQ unit at this Von Hutier one if I can. It's 420, however. And for research, I'm mostly going to be trying to invest in gas shell production. This is going to help me have more shells to fire, which is going to be important with the Germans. So that's my general plan of action, and we'll see how well it plays out. Alright, stay tuned for the next update.